Hello and a warm welcome back to Solo Board Gaming Presents, and the first of our double-header games covering the air war of World War One over Britain. As promised, Zeppelin Raider, a solitaire Zeppelin game by Gregory M. Smith. Who else indeed? These are Zeppelins of the Imperial German Navy. And as we mentioned in our introductory video, just prior to this one, this is one of those solitaire, narrative-driven, immersive experiences that Greg Smith is now pretty famed for, in the vein of Night Fighter Ace, Interceptor Ace, and the submarine games, Hunters, Hunted, Silent Victory, Beneath the Med, and that kind of thing. So if you like those, you're going to love this. But it was brand new to me. Airships. Sort of know a bit about Zeppelin raids. Didn't know what it was like to pilot them or crew them. So just before we dive into the setup of the game, I just want to show you a book I bought. And it was a book recommended in Greg's bibliography in the rule book. And here it is. Let me just move that out of the way. Whoa, a weighty tome indeed. The Zeppelin in Combat. This isn't just the development, this is the Zeppelin in Combat, a history of the German Naval Airship Division, 1912 to 1918. And this book, still freely available right now. I bought this one from Amazon. Douglas Robinson. Very quick look through the book. I'm not going to dive deep into it. Full to the brim. And there's Peter Strasser, Chief of the Naval Airship Service, that photo taken in 1913. And he actually died in action over England in August 1918. Wow. And that's Chief of the Naval Airship Service, who often used to go along on raids. He wanted to know what was happening. What were we up against? Quite a leader, this guy. Airship raids, it goes through every single Zeppelin type and also the other kind of airships as well. Battle of Jutland was there, look. And it'll take some raids and it'll follow every single movement of the airship as it made its way across Britain and pursued by searchlights and fighters and things like that, and what it was like to try and crew these monsters at really high altitudes, rudimentary equipment, in a very, very fragile machine, freezing to death at high altitude, let alone trying to fight the ship. How they're constructed, and some of the things I learned was absolutely amazing. And from then on, after reading it cover to cover, look at this deck log in a raid of April 12th to the 13th, 1918. The deck log, every movement, every height change, every course correction of the raid. And then there are some brilliant appendices at the back. And I must just mention these because they're so important. Summary of German naval operations, how many of what type of operation through each year of the war. And here, look, personnel expansion, German naval airship bases. This is really a superb book. And a real treat if you can manage to get yourself a copy. It goes through the history, the combat history of every single Zeppelin, LZ-14, here look to 27, 28, 31, 32, and so on. Every single raid, how many bombs were dropped, the volume of each ship, cubic feet, its length, diameter, height, so all of its stats. Incredible data. who the captains were. An invaluable book. Greg Smith himself called this the Bible of Zeppelins in combat in World War One. I just thought I'd mention that. If you can manage to get yourself a copy, it's well worth it, and a real eye-opener. Fantastic book. So, a very quick look around the contents. Again, as mentioned briefly before, a terrific rule book, very easy to read. It's in full colour, although there's not a lot of illustration, obviously. You do get the counters illustrated, I think at the beginning of the book, for instance. And it's only about 20 pages long. The rules, that is. The rule book is 24 pages. The rules themselves are around 20 pages, because then you have designer notes, optional rules, and things like that, with an index on the back, which is always very useful and extremely easy to read. Now, I say extremely easy to read, but as in most of these games, there's no real sequence of play in there that you can follow. You can follow the rules sort of page by page, finding what to do next. Absolutely fine. No problem with that. But we could always do with a summary, couldn't we? And there isn't really a decent summary there. So many times we wargamers find ourselves thanking the legendary Stuka Joe, and I'm no different. I'm going to do the same again here. Thank you, Stuka Joe, because he has produced, and he's done this before, we've seen it before, he has produced a deck of cards, and these are available as a file on Board Game Geek to print off, and he's recently updated these to add a couple more cards. And simply, don't think this is a card-driven game, because it's not. This is purely an aid memoir. So simply, you print them off, and the yellow ones are pre-flight sequence of play. The blue ones are in-flight sequence of play. Okay? And the black ones are a post-flight sequence of play. Okay, that's all it is. So to go through the game, you simply start off with card 1, do what it says there. When you've finished, we go on to card 2. Then we go on to card 3, and this is simply the phases of play, the sequence of play for the game. And this takes us through each turn, but in order. It's an aid memoir, keeps us on track of what we should be doing next. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you again, Stuka Joe. Most of these cards here are from his original file. He has recently updated it, as I mentioned, so I've printed off a couple of editions and put them in there because he added a couple of cards again for ease of play. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Stuka Joe. And if you're going to get this game at all, or if you've got the game and you haven't done so yet, definitely go to BGG, bottom of the page to the file section, and the sequence of play cards will be there. So we'll definitely be using those. Next thing, again, typical in these games, we get a ton of player aids. Look at this, a ton of player aids, because yes, of course, it's a solitaire game, so there's lots of dice rolling, which I don't mind at all. I'm absolutely used to it. In fact, I love dice rolling. There's something about it. A lot of these are double-sided as well. So for each event or for each phase of the game, we'll be going through some dice rolling on these player aid cards. The airship we're starting with is going to be this P-class airship, because we're starting in May 1915. You can start earlier in the war in 1914 with an M-class ship, but if you do so, you'll only be scouting the North Sea and not bombing England. So we join in May 1915 at the start of the campaign, the bombing campaign against England, and therefore with the P-class ship. And there are plenty of other ships to progress to throughout the war, throughout the campaign. Look at that, the X-class. Whoa! Available July 1918. What a monster. Our current ship, for instance, here, that we're starting with in 1915, has 4 engines. This one has 7 engines. What a monster. And they're double-sided. There you go, Q-class, S-class, W-class. Amazing things. Okay, but we're starting with the P-class, as I said, because we're starting in May 1915. Now, the area over which we'll be playing is the North Sea map here. And this is where we're going to be starting our campaign. And we will do 1, maybe 2 patrols as play demos. Our bases will be here. And we'll be patrolling out either over the North Sea on scouting missions in search of naval assets, or taking the risk and going further and bombing the British coastal ports, or even venturing inland as far as Manchester or Liverpool or even Glasgow, and there's Edinburgh there, look, or the huge prize target of London. There is another map in the game, and I briefly mentioned this when we looked through the contents of Zeppelin in Combat, the recommended book. And the other map is this one, where your Zeppelin would be based here in Jamboree. And you can see here Sofia, Bucharest. And you would fly missions across the Mediterranean to bomb certain locations maybe, but mainly attempts made to resupply German forces in East Africa by Zeppelin. Now, ultimately, the actual mission was eventually recalled, but you can try this perilous mission. And I say perilous mission because you could also be blown off course into any of these travel boxes here, and there's every chance that your ship could just disappear, lost, never to be seen again. There are these, every box with a stripe are desert hexes where you'll be venting one cell upon entering them. So it's actually very difficult to complete the mission as you lose more and more of your precious gas. And that, of course, is due to the heat. We'll come on to that when we go through this main game. So that's another option in the game. And then, of course, absolutely essential, we've got our logbook. We all love a logbook, where we're starting here in May 1915 in our P class. I am Captain Lieutenant Walter Solo, that's me, and I'm in L10. And we'll just log our missions here. Never enough room to do so properly, lots of shorthand needed, but that's what we'll do, logging our career. And here we go. We are ready to set up for our mission to start playing our play demo. So let's get stuck into it now. I've laid the table out like so. We will be going down further into the map or into our playmat as and when necessary. But what do we have so far? As I say, we're in a P-class Zeppelin. We're starting in May 1915. Now, the prestige points required to command this ship is 1. 1 prestige point. So here we are here, look. We've started with 1 prestige, and we want to add to that prestige throughout our missions so that we can upgrade, for instance, to more advanced airships and so on. We're a Captain Lieutenant by way of rank, and my name is Captain Walter Solo. Our P-class ship has a length of 536 feet, a speed of 58 miles per hour, a ceiling of 10,500 feet, and a crew of 18. And where are we based? Well, I've already rolled for that. We're based in Nordholz here. And there's the counter that represents our ship there, our Zeppelin, that P-class ship there. Now, we'll be explaining the various elements as we get to them. One thing I normally use, by the way, the dress-up doll that we've come to expect with these narrative type games from Greg Smith. Personally, I think they're brilliant. I love having this on the table, and I would normally have it there somewhere, but because of space, I'm not doing that. With your dress-up doll, you see, you can have his gained leadership skills here. You can put on, pin on his awards as you win awards, and we all want to win awards. It's a great little thing. I do enjoy that, and that's what I normally use. But because of lack of room, we can also put most of those things here on the actual playmat. So for the sake of space, that's what we're going to do today. Now, remember, we're using Stuka Joe's brilliant player aid cards so that we keep track of our sequence of play. And we're starting with the first mission assignment card. Card number 1, roll 2d6 on the corresponding year on chart A1. Here we go. Mission assignment chart. The corresponding year is 1915. We're going to roll 2d6. Here goes. And see what we have. We have 6. No, we have a 4 and a 3. We have 7. No! No. Honestly, we've rolled a 7, and we're going to bomb London on our first mission. Okay, that's what we want to do. I'm just going to note that on our trusty game log. Bomb out the end. So if that's the state of our rolls from now on, it's gonna be good. Okay, so we know we're gonna have a bombing mission now. So we get another counter here, just to remind us, because it's important that we differentiate between bombing and scouting missions. We need to know what kind of mission it is we're on. So we put the mission bombing counter on the map there. Okay, so that's the next thing we've done. Let's move on. What is going to be our takeoff weather? So we're now going to roll on the W1 chart. That should be on the back of that one. And it is. No, it's not. It's the one underneath. Okay. So we're going to roll on that chart next, which is our weather chart. And it's spring, because we're between March and May. And we're going to roll 1d6. So we roll 1d6 for the takeoff weather. And we've got a 5. Is that a 5? Yes, we've got a 5. And our takeoff weather in spring is rain. Nuts. Now, already, we're only just setting up our mission. And the game has reminded me what a brilliant game this is. It really is. We have just rolled for wind. Let me show you something. Now, we could have rolled for clear, which is fine. We could have rolled for light rain, which is fine, because we don't then have to roll for any associated wind. But anything from rain upwards, that's rain, heavy rain, gale, then we have to roll for wind. And wind, obviously with a lighter than air ship, has implications. So, first of all, we'll put our, where are we? Our rain token. Where's our rain token? Here we go. Here, like so, to remind us. And before we go any further, in fact, that little counter there, which shows rain, look, we see that? I don't know if that's focused properly, but in the top right of that counter, it says -2. That is the amount of weight in water that rain is exerting on the envelope of our airship. Our airship is a massive envelope, and due to that rain, the weight of the water has an enormous effect on the performance of our airship. Oh yes. So that -2 means that to counter that, already we have to drop 2 ballast. And we'll come on to what that means in a second. But first of all, we have to roll for wind. So let's do that. Let's just roll this D6 for wind. And we've rolled a 4. We have a wind direction gauge here, look, this token. Da-da-da. Don't know if that's in focus. Okay. And we rolled a 4, so we look at the compass, and that's the direction that the wind is coming in at the moment. Directly against us. Don't forget, we're based here in Nordholz. So that too has a direct effect on us piloting our lighter than air Zeppelin. Each box we travel into, when we're travelling directly against the wind, like for instance, the wind's coming this way, so whenever we're travelling in a box that way, we'll take 1 complete fuel cell instead of half a fuel cell. You'll see that in action very, very shortly. But normally when you're travelling from box to box, you delete half a fuel cell because we're using fuel because the engines are running. But if we're travelling against the wind at any point, you deplete your fuel by 1 complete cell instead of half a cell. Now, there's a chance that the weather might change during the game. Let's hope it does, and let's hope it changes for the better. But this is war. Despite the rain, despite the wind, we're still going to take off and attempt to cross the North Sea. Now, of course, this is where your skills come in, because we have to bear all that in mind, the rain, the wind, when we're trying to balance the loadout of our Zeppelin. So we've checked for the takeoff weather and responded to that. Number 3 is load Zeppelin. Load your Zeppelin. You may adjust ballast and bomb load. And that's what we're going to have to do. Let's take a little bit of a closer look. Now, first of all, luckily, we start off with a trained crew. Now, the crew can also be green, and that may happen if we have to replace generic crew. But we start off as trained. They can also become veteran. And obviously, again, it stands to reason that would have effects on the game. So we place our crew quality counter there, trained crew. It's as well to know what our current altitude is. Okay, current altitude, there's the silhouette of our Zeppelin there. This is our altitude along the bottom, and our current altitude is we're on the ground. And you can see you've got low altitude and medium altitude. Other airships will also have high altitude or even very high altitude. But this is what we're limited to with our ceiling of 10,500 feet. So currently we're on the ground. Let's look at fuel. This is fuel here, and it goes from fuel full dun, 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 to fuel empty here. We've got to get across the North Sea to London, find our target, bomb the target, avoid the fighters and the flak, recross the North Sea to land safely back at base. This is very, very important. It's vital that we keep an eye on this. And we mark it with this little token here, which says current fuel. So our current fuel is full. like so. Now you remember, I mentioned that for each travel box, normally for each travel box you move, you'll flip the counter over, current fuel level, because you've used half of that cell. Next travel box, it's used all of that cell, and you move to there like so. It's full, you move another travel box, it uses half a cell, move another travel box, and so on. And that's how your fuel gets used. But we know that we've got wind from the northwest, and if we travel against that wind, instead of using half a cell like so, we're going to use instead for each travel box against the wind a full cell. Another travel box against the wind, a full cell. We're soon going to deplete this fuel. Why is this crew taking off in these conditions? It's nuts. Anyway, okay. Now, ballast. This is our ballast. We start here with full ballast to empty. Okay. Now, each time we release or drop ballast, we can raise one altitude. We can increase altitude. But remember, you can always drop ballast to increase altitude, but you never get your ballast back again, ever. So the less ballast you have, the fewer maneuvering options you have. And you don't want to hit the deck at any point. So that's where we start, full ballast. We can go with extra ballast. We'll discuss that in a moment. Next thing, bomb load. Now, we're going to bomb London. We have to carry bombs. And our bomb load is ×4. Look, 4 times bombs. Now, that can mean various things. Look, we can put 4 bombs in. There's a bomb. I like that. There's a bomb. Okay? So you put 4 bombs in the hold, like so. 3, 4. And that's us completely kitted out. But we want to take some incendiaries as well. Now, for 1 bomb equals 2 incendiaries. So I can take that off and I can add 2 incendiaries, which I'm going to do. 1, 2. Okay. I took off 1 of the 4, so I've now got 3 bombs. So I can carry 2 incendiaries as well. And we'll see how they're used later in the game. But also I have to remember about ballast. This really is worrying me more than anything, more than the fuel, in fact. So if I remove 1 more bomb, I can take on board that extra ballast. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. So my loadout is now 2 bombs and 2 incendiaries. Not a lot, considering I'm going to bomb London. Not a lot at all. We can also take 3, see here, paraflares. These are our paraflares. And these paraflares will be used not only to indicate a target to us at night, to make navigation easier, but potentially also to blind temporarily anti-aircraft gunners. Very important. So we need to carry these 3 paraflares. So we've only got the opportunity to use a paraflare 3 times. And we'll need them. While we're in this corner, just have a look at all of the other elements that can be damaged by mechanical failure, by anti-aircraft, or by fighters. It's these. Our machine guns, our wireless, our bomb sight, The vertical rudder times 3 hits. The horizontal stabilizer here times 2 hits. And then engine 1, 2, 3 and 4. I have a pair of engines here and a pair of engines there. And furthermore, both our aft gondola and our forward gondola can be damaged, look, which is going to be causing casualties, potentially, if they are damaged. And finally, we have our gas cells. This is a very fragile machine. Well, we're nearly ready to go. Start forward engines!
Aye, sir!
So, as our forward engines get started, there's something else we have to do. All of the rain that we can hear clattering all over our envelope is weighing us down. Luckily, we took on that extra ballast. But rain, as I showed you a few minutes ago on the token over on our map, causes us to jettison 2 ballast before we can even take off. Such is the huge weight of the gallons of water that are on our envelope. Jettison ballast!
Aye, sir!
1, 2. We're already at 5 ballast in order to take off. Start aft engines.
Aye, Captain!
Let go the ropes and up ship.